Hey everybody, this is Flavio Romeo, and on this episode of the Towncast, we went to the American Bulldog Coffee Roasters in Ridgewood, New Jersey. They have outstanding coffee, and they bake all of their own goodies right in their facility, right there on Broad Street in Ridgewood. And we had the chance to talk to Kathleen Carter, who's a literary publicist and has worked on dozens and dozens of books. She talks about the process, the books that are coming out, and she was also the publicist for local author Ben Perkert, who we had on the Towncast a couple weeks ago. All right, enjoy the episode, everybody. All right, so here we are, everybody. We are at the American Bulldog Coffee Roasters. I think it's a long name, but it's really good coffee. They have amazing, amazing treats. But more amazing than that is Kathleen Carter, publicist to the stars, I guess. I mean, so many
literary.
Yeah, literary stars. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
So first thing I have to ask, obviously you hear a lot about publicist, whether it's you're an actor, you're a singer, you're a performer, whatever it is, and then of course a book publicist.
Yeah.
How would you define what a publicist does?
Well, a publicist for authors and books, like the job is to get the book and the author media attention. So whether that's interviews on podcasts, TV,
Towncast.
There you go. Reviews, of course, book reviews and everywhere from like the New York Times to local papers.
Okay, so you get all that out, press releases and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah. So interviews, reviews, mentions, things like that. There's book roundups all the time, so trying to get your books in those. Setting up
What's a book roundup?
Like the best books of March or the best books of 2023. So
Ben Perkert.
Yeah.
We had Ben Perkert on the Towncast a couple weeks ago, local author, and he ended up getting selected as the best top 20 in Vanity Fair.
Yeah, he was.
Was that you?
Yeah, that was from our pitching. Yeah.
All right.
And
that's gotta feel good.
It does feel good. Yeah, it's awesome.
And it's and just to make it clear, it's not like she has buddies that work at Vanity Fair. They're like, okay, we'll pick your book this time.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it's very selective.
That would make my job a lot easier. Yeah.
How many, in a case like that, how many books do they go through? I mean, it's got to be a ton.
Hundreds, if not more. Yeah. And they're pitched, I think some of these editors receive thousands of emails a week, hundreds a day by people like myself. So they have to sift through all of these messages, and that's like a fraction of their job.
Right.
It's not even,
They must hate when this time of year comes around.
They do.
It's like UPS drivers at Christmas time.
Exactly. So the job is trying to get all that coverage, but also I write the press materials for the book. So that's a press release, maybe an author Q&A, the author bio, and then I in many cases help set up like the book events and tours for authors, depending on what they're doing. So, yeah.
So how many authors are you working with currently?
I don't have an exact number on the top of my head, but I have projects that I'm wrapping up on that.
It's ongoing. I mean,
it's ongoing, and I usually get involved about 8 months to a year ahead of a book's publication date.
Oh wow!
And then I'm on usually 8 weeks after the book goes on sale. So I'm on for a really long time, and so the work comes in different phases. So at the start, it's really just meetings and brainstorming and just reading, finishing the book, going over, talking points, things like that, building all the media lists. So it's slower in the beginning, and then I'd say around the 6-month mark, the pitching starts and resources become available, advanced copies of the book, whether it's digital or physical copies, getting those out to media so that they have the time to consider them and start doing all of that really early outreach for consideration. It's just like a lot of pitching and following up to make sure that even the editors are seeing the email and aware of the book.
So how do you because obviously, if it's 8 months before it's published,
Yeah.
you're getting manuscripts?
Yes.
Are the authors sending them to you, or are you getting them from the publicist?
It depends on who's
from
hiring
the,
me,
the
publisher. It depends on who's hiring me. So if an author's hiring me, I get the manuscript from the author. If the publisher is hiring me, they
Oh,
send
so
me.
it works both ways?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
And I read every book before I commit to working on it. So
You read, like,
yeah,
really?
yeah.
And I know that if you read movie scripts, you can get through the first 10 pages and realize, hey, this
Right.
is something. Is it the same thing?
It's similar.
Similar.
I like to give a book 100 pages.
100 pages?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because some books might start off slow, or maybe I'm having like an off day and I'm just not in it.
Right.
So I'd like to see where the book is going.
Because you're human.
Yeah,
And things happen.
yeah, and like I'm not always on. So, so by 100 pages, if I feel like meh, then I stop.
Yeah. Now, have there been times where you'll read through the 100 pages and you think, there's something here, but do you encourage them to edit it or change things, or is it done deal?
I really don't. So my job is not to edit.
Right. So you get it, it's like,
yeah,
this is it.
I think there have been a handful of times where I've known I've wanted to work on a project, and I had a couple of moments of pause during reading the early manuscript where I said to the author, like, this is not going to keep me from working on the book, but I just wanted to flag this as a reader, this was kind of like a moment for me, and if maybe that's a conversation to have with your editor, like, so there have been moments like that, but I don't go in and edit otherwise.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so did you grow up in this area?
Yeah, I grew up in Suffern, so it's in New York, but it's like 20
That's
minutes
where
away.
I used to go when you couldn't drink here legally. We used
There
to
you
go
go.
out to, and then drink up there, and then
There you
somehow
go.
make
Ireland?
it home.
Did you go to Ireland?
The Orange, was it the Orange Pub?
I
Up in
don't
that
know.
area.
Maybe.
Suffern
Yeah,
area.
yeah. Well, not too
I know
far.
you guys know where the Orange Pub is. So you grew up in that. How did you get involved? How do you get involved in it? Is there classes?
So it was really luck and by
And this is
accident.
my own ignorance.
Yeah,
Really,
no,
I have no idea.
So I went to Fairfield University in Connecticut, and I was an English literature major,
That's how it starts.
art
You
history
like to read.
minor. I like to read.
You have to like to read.
You do.
It's not. You can't be a movie critic if
No,
you don't like movies.
Exactly. Yeah. But I didn't know what I was going to do with that degree, and neither
As
did
most
any
people,
of the
yeah.
adults in my life. Were like, "What are you going to do with yourself?"
Right.
But I wound up taking a publishing course, and I knew nothing about it. It just seemed like an interesting thing to take, so I took it. And the professor was also a published author, and a former client of his was working at a boutique PR firm in the city. For books, and they were looking for an intern. So he said, I think you should do this, like it was paid, it's not too far from Connecticut to the city. I was a
So you were going
senior
to school there and
Yeah.
you were commuting to the city.
for this
Internship.
internship. But it was like, I was a senior, I had a light schedule, and I was getting paid.
Nice.
So I went in for the interview, got the internship, and then when I was going to graduate and the internship was over, they offered me a job.
Nice.
So
You
it was
were
very
working right out of
yeah,
school.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And do you remember what your first major solo project was?
So one of the first campaigns I was involved with, which was really exciting,
Campaign.
was...
See, I don't know any of the technology
all right.
or any of the words that come up.
That's okay.
So your first campaign.
It wasn't my first campaign, but it was one of the first where I was really given freedom to do the work. Was Jodi Picoult. She's a #1 New York Times bestselling author, and she happened to be at the time my favorite author. I had just finished one of the books that she's most famous for is My Sister's Keeper, and I had just finished reading that personally. I read it in a day.
Wow.
Couldn't put it
What's
down.
her name?
Jodi Picoult. So it's Jodi, and her last name is Picoult.
Okay.
She's amazing, and one of my bosses was her publicist. And so I remember when I went in for the interview, I did the interview in her office, and all of Jodi's books were surrounding her, and I died. I was like,
this is where I want to be.
Yeah.
That's so great.
So I got to assist on her campaigns while I worked at the firm, which was called Goldberg McDuffie Communications. So that was huge for me. And I very early on was given...
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's when you knew, all right, this is...
Yeah. I knew pretty immediately that I was excited by what was going on in that office and what they did.
Now, do you ever receive manuscripts before a publisher accepts them, or do they have to be published
For
first?
me, It's rare. I have read manuscripts before they've been submitted to publishers or even agents, but there's really nothing I can do at that stage, so it's not beneficial.
Can't promote anything.
Yeah, and it's not. I think so. I do hear from a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I have this book idea. Can you help me get published?" And that's just not what I do.
Right.
My job starts after you've gotten a publisher and you have a sense of when the book is coming out. I can't do any of my
You're like
work.
a promoter.
Yeah.
Basically a promoter.
Yeah.
So listen, don't if you've got an idea for a children's book, or don't bother Kathleen yet. She'll help you promote it once you have that. Now, so I do want to talk about the differences between a publisher, and a self-published book.
Sure.
Have you been approached by people that have self-published?
Yes. Lots.
And is that how do you feel about that?
I don't work on self-published books. I find just for the type of PR that I do, it's very difficult to get coverage for self-published books.
Okay.
So for that reason, for me, something that's really important to me is like expectations and like a client being satisfied and feel like I can realistically meet expectations. And there are some editors and producers who won't even consider a self-published book.
Right.
There's like a pretty healthy number of them that don't.
Really?
So if you're thinking like, oh, I'm going to write this book, I'm going to publish it myself, and I'm going to get an interview in a magazine, or I'm going to get a review in the New York Times, like likely not.
Right.
Yeah, because they'll look at it and be like, no. Yeah, so for the type of media that usually I'm hired to pursue, it's not really possible for a self-published book at this point. So it's just harder all around.
It's it's the same thing with acting, the same thing with screenwriters.
Yeah.
They have this great. So what is the process? You have to get an agent. What is the whole?
Yeah. So typically, the process is you send out a query to agents with like a manuscript or perhaps a book proposal idea, and you shop that around to a list of agents and hear back from them or not.
Yeah, and believe me, you get more no's than yeses, so don't take it personally.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's also, this isn't our style.
Right.
It's not the type of books
Right.
that we do.
We can't, or we just did, or we have another book like this and it just wouldn't, I don't know. There are a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
And, very successful authors, like Jodi included, received thousands of rejections of their first book ideas and then went on to be.
Rowling.
Yeah.
I mean, that's famously rejected in so many ways.
Yeah.
Had to change her name.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of the traditional route, is to try and get an agent. Your agent, accepts the idea or the manuscript. Some agents do work with you on editing and developing that story. Some don't, but I know that there are some who are very hands-on in that process. And then their job is to submit the manuscripts to publishers for consideration. And then,
So that's the first thing.
That's the first
Try
step.
to find an agent that's going to represent your
Yes.
work. Okay.
Yeah. And then the agent shops it out to publishers, and then you see what the feedback is there. Sometimes there's what's called bidding wars, where publishers will.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. Publishers sort of fight with each
Have
other.
you seen that
Yeah.
happen? Have you worked on any of those? Really?
Yeah.
So how is that? I mean,
It's exciting. I mean, it makes the project more attractive to me as a publicist, because it would have already happened. So when someone comes to me and says, "Oh, my book's being published by so and so," it was, there was like a really heated bidding war for it, and there's a lot of excitement about it. That makes me more excited about potentially representing it. So yeah.
Have there? And I'm sure this is. Have there been books that you've read that just like?
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Usually I know, even before I've read it, like I tend to do introductory phone calls with people before I take the time to read anything, because if I have a conversation with someone and I just am like, yeah, we're not gonna be a fit, then I don't want to spend the time reading their book if I know there's no way this is gonna work. Yeah.
That's got to be hard.
It is. It's really hard to say no. Yeah.
That's why so many people don't even say anything.
Right.
Right. You submit stuff
feel
to
bad.
agents and it's just nothing.
Yeah. I think it's a combination of the lack of time to get back to everyone, and also just feeling bad about turning something down.
Yeah. Well, they're getting so many manuscripts and query letters.
Yeah.
So how many, on average, how many manuscripts or books are you going through in a month?
A lot. Yeah. Let's see, I'm trying to think what I have in my queue right now. I think right now I'm reading...
Tell me what you're working on.
Well, what I'm just reading to consider right now, I have like 3 manuscripts that I'm reading for like future pub dates, like fall of 24 into 2025.
Wow.
Yeah.
You read that far out? So
yeah.
That far out. Oh.
Yeah, because I'm booked now through like October of 24 with projects, so I can't take anything else on that's publishing between now and then. So yeah, I'm looking towards
next year already.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
It's that competitive.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, and I also just prefer to be on board as early as possible because I hate jumping in late and then having to get caught up, and it's the same amount of work in a condensed amount of time, which is just I don't like to work that way. I will, but I don't like to.
Well, that affords you time to have a cup of coffee
and
chat with us.
That's right. Yeah.
So tell me what you're excited about that they can look for later this year, early into next year.
Okay.
Did you work in all genres?
I work in a wide variety. So I work on fiction and nonfiction. In fiction, I work on pretty much everything. I don't do a ton of like fantasy, but I do, literary fiction, thrillers.
Young adult?
I do some young adult. It's a little bit harder from a traditional PR standpoint, but I am actually working on a young adult novel that comes out on Valentine's Day.
Oh,
nice. But it's got a very clever premise, and I really enjoyed it.
Say anything yet?
I can. It comes out on Valentine's Day at 24. It's called Running Mates. Running Mates.
Okay.
And it's a YA rom-com that's sort of about, it's being called like a modern day Romeo and Juliet. It's about 2 runners in high school who fall for each other, but they're from opposing families and opposing political parties. And so it's about falling for someone who you don't align with in those ways, or at least you think you don't. And so very relevant in today's world in terms of bridging the gap between those differences. And
who's the author?
Her name is Emily Locker, and she's actually a psychotherapist by day. So, and she works with
that's cool.
Yeah. So
it's cool here knowing people's stories.
It is, yeah, and that's a big part of what goes into some of the decision-making process too, because I am trying to get coverage for the books, but I'm also trying to get coverage of the author. So if the author has a really cool personal backstory, or the inspiration for the book is drawn from their real life, I can use all of that to get some kind of coverage, whether it's like an interview or they want to write a personal essay somewhere. That's all stuff that I work with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they can write a personal essay, and you would help them promote it?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So I help place those essays. So a book that just came out this week, actually, it's a memoir called Everyone But Myself, and it's a memoir by a woman named Julie Chavez, and it's about mental health and motherhood, and just sort of like, basically the title is very apt, like what happens when you take care of everyone but yourself.
Right.
And her experiences sort of with anxiety and depression, and how she came back from
parents.
it. Yeah. Yep. But so she wrote an essay for Real Simple magazine, so that will be out in the January-February issue that I placed for her. So, yeah.
And her book just came out.
Just came out on Tuesday.
So that's just another way of getting your name out there, getting your word out there.
Yeah, and she wrote like an op-ed for the New York Post about resolving to treat herself more like she treats her kids in 2024.
Well, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
Pamper yourself.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
So that's been a really fun one, and very, relatable for parents, especially moms, I think. But so that's been a fun one. Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, I've got to write this, are there genres or are there types of books that you haven't worked on that you'd like to work on? Like, do you think like I've never really done this type of book or that type, or have you pretty much been across the board?
I've honestly worked on pretty much everything. I don't work on a ton of like books on like economics, or I try not to work on business books, to be honest. I have worked on them in the past. It's just not I'm not here for that. It's fine. There's an audience for it for sure, but it's not an enjoyable read, and it's honestly not an enjoyable, for me, working experience.
Yeah. Part of your publicism, do you try to get people placed on TV shows like Good
Yeah.
Morning America.
Yes.
So you do that as well.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
do it like just across the board.
Yeah.
Wherever.
Yeah, and like the book clubs, like the Good Morning America Book Club or the Today Show Book Club,
Oh,
like
okay.
I pitch authors and their books for that, and like collaboration with their publishers.
Nice.
Because for fiction, that's huge. That really moves the needle to get those. It's so difficult and rare, but it's really exciting when it happens.
Have you had any surprises? Like, have you worked on a book where it's like, it's okay, and
Yeah.
so you do your work and you do
Right.
your job, but then all of a sudden, like, it really clicks and.
I'm trying to think if there's like a super surprise campaign for me. Nothing really comes to mind. As I feel like part of my job is like I sort of
clean that up.
I'm kind of aware. I mean, of like who could potentially
What's gonna work?
get their hands on a book, and so the hope is always there that like, oh, someone will shout it out, you know.
Yeah.
But
Have there ever been the other side where you think this is
Yeah.
really good and then
Yeah.
everybody's just
Yeah.
like, no?
yeah,
Really?
yeah, there have been books where I felt like the author had a great, platform and background and connections, and I thought the book was excellent, and it just, for one reason or another, maybe was considered, but like didn't get the final coverage,
Right. Do they explain to you why? Like,
Not usually.
not usually. Right?
Not usually.
It's the same thing that we hear.
Yeah.
Is, when you're expecting something.
Yeah, you don't usually get a ton of feedback. Usually it's like, oh, well, we had this scheduled for our whatever issue, and then that column got killed, so it just there was no space for it. Or, sometimes I get that explanation, but usually it's just like folks requesting the book and saying, yeah, it's on our radar, and then something happens or it doesn't, no matter how many times I follow up,
And you can't take it personally. Just
You
have to move
can't,
on.
and that's really hard because I do take things personally.
Yeah.
I think that's
'Cause
part
it
of the
is- 'cause
reason
it's
why.
you. It's- yeah.
Especially if it's someone that I've worked with before and maybe had better success with on a previous campaign, and then go into the new campaign feeling like, all right, like we're gonna get even more
momentum.
Yeah.
No.
But there's so many factors. Like in 24, it's going to be interesting because like the political situation is going to impact all books coverage.
Running mates should do well.
I would hope so,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's not just going to impact like the nonfiction that comes out. It's going to impact all books because everyone's going to be so focused on covering what's going on in that world.
Yeah.
There's going to be less space for.
Do you get that every 4 years?
Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah, and it's it happens around elections. It happens around other big, like COVID really impacted publishing in a major way. Just the process of publicizing a book is wildly different from how it was before COVID.
Really?
Yeah.
How so? Like, what were...
So because everyone's working from home, even though like some of these big offices, staff goes in, every once in a while, maybe not every day, we used to do these big media mailings where we would send out 200 advanced reader copies of books, 4 to 6 months out to all the offices. So that, the editors and their teams would go through all the book mail and, they have shelves and they categorize the books and sort of visually get a sense of what's coming.
Right.
That really doesn't happen because everybody's working from home and they don't want hundreds of books being sent to their apartment in Manhattan,
They don't want to give those addresses out.
No. So it's just, it's sort of done digitally now, which is harder to...
Oh, really?
Yeah,
You have to
there's
send them a
digital copy. And then, hope that they open it.
So
hope
who
that
does
they-
all the scanning?
They have an assistant, some of them. Well, it's so like a PDF, or there's this thing called NetGalley, which is like it's like an online reading place. So I usually just send a link to the NetGalley, and usually most folks in media have an account. So they just log
So
into
they
their
can sign
account, it
up.
goes into their Kindle.
Gotcha.
It's not that difficult, but still, it's different than being like, you should have received this book. And sometimes the cover is stunning and makes an impact, and that sort of experience
You lose
is
it.
lost. So now people get really mad if you send things to them and they didn't ask for it. So it's, yeah, like remove me from your mailing list.
Right.
So
you get the same.
Oh, yeah.
We kind of
Very humbling.
We tend to put people in your position, publishers, publicists. At this level, you're still human.
Oh yeah.
And when you get rejected or you get no response, or people like stop sending you stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
What did I do wrong?
No, it's just, and if you think about it, if you take yourself out of it and you think about it and you're like, well, if I was receiving 25 packages a day
Is
to
that-
my home.
Is that on average? I don't
It's
even
probably
know.
more than that, honestly, that they would have gotten. And that maybe they may still get, like the New York Times definitely gets hundreds of books a week.
Because I know in talking to agents, casting directors, they say the same thing. They say, we receive dozens, if not hundreds,
Yeah.
of submissions for one or two of these roles, and then to be able to go through everything and read through the resume, it's usually just no, and you don't know how good they are or how bad they are.
Yeah, I think it comes to sort of like thinking of, I think, well, for my job, it's like subject lines are important.
Right.
Like if Stephen King gives your book a blurb, you're going to put that Stephen King praised this book in the subject line.
Yeah.
Because,
Stephen King says blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's so, but most books don't get an endorsement from Stephen King.
How does that happen?
Yeah.
Is that your job? Like, if you get a manuscript, do you send it to authors to say, hey, I thought you might enjoy this book.
Yeah.
We'd love to get a...
I am sometimes pulled in to help with that. Usually it's an editor's job to take the manuscript and share it with, bigger names in the industry who can
See
help.
if they'll write a review or something.
Yeah. Because those early
That's the
blurbs are
publisher's
really...
job.
The publisher, the agent, the editor, usually that's what they're tasked with. Sometimes an agent will have represented someone big and is like, I will deliver this to so-and-so. But then
Do me a favor, write something.
Yeah, or just even take a look. And then I'm also consulted on that. Like, we know you've worked with so-and-so. Would you be comfortable asking him or her to take a read? And if they like it, give it a blurb. Because those blurbs then go on the back of the book, and they're used in my press materials. And I do have a book that got blurbed by Stephen King that comes out this spring. So
Really?
I think,
What book is that?
it's called The Return of Ellie Black, and it's a thriller about missing girls, and it's so good.
Really?
It's really good.
Are there, all right, I gotta write this. So say it again?
The Return of Ellie Black.
All right. So
It's really creepy.
I'm gonna see, like, if you have, really?
Yeah, it's so good.
Have any of your books become movies? Any books that you've worked on become movies?
They've become like a lot of the books I've worked on have been optioned for film or TV. Some are in various stages of production, but none that I have recently worked on have been.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But it's so a book can be optioned like to death and never be made into anything. But it's still
such a tough
exciting.
business.
It is.
When you think about how many people write how many books, and then what ends up being published, is, that book was published, got to get on the shelf,
Right.
and it has to get good reviews.
Yep. Yeah, it's really a lot. Yeah.
So listen, if you are a writer and you are published, and you're looking for a publicist, obviously she knows what she's doing. How can they get a hold of you? You have a website?
I do. It's really long.
All right, you tell me.
It's
I'm gonna post it right under here.
It's just www.KathleenCarterCommunications.com.
That's it.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
It's a lot of
It's a
words.
lot of words.
And Kathleen is with a K.
It is. Yep.
Kathleen Carter Communications. All right. And then communications. I can't talk and write at the same
That's all
time.
right.
Because I'm not a writer.
There you go. Well,
And if people are interested in hiring or getting more information,
Yeah.
is there an email address where they can email you and
Yeah.
say, can we set up a time to talk?
yeah. Well, on my website there's a form you could fill out. So
Okay.
if you want to do it that way,
Oh, nice. Okay.
that works.
Nice.
Otherwise, it's just Kathleen at KathleenCarterCommunications.com.
Well, I know this is a very rare opportunity, but I have a local author, and I know a lot of you guys know this guy, and you know this book, but it was a gift that someone wanted me
Aw.
to make sure to present on their behalf.
That's so
And I know a
sweet.
lot of you have already read I Called Her Mary. You know what the story is about. If you don't, then you have to go to our YouTube channel, scroll back about a year or so, and you'll see the interview we did. But he wanted me to present you
Oh,
with
that's
this book.
amazing.
Yeah, he used to be the superintendent of Ridgewood High School, the Ridgewood schools.
Oh wow,
Pretty
that's
sure.
amazing.
Right, Tom? I hope I didn't get that wrong.
I can't wait to read it. That was so thoughtful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So that
That's
is for you,
amazing.
and even though it is self-published,
Yeah.
it's a tremendous story.
Absolutely.
And just knowing how it came out, like there was that one one movie that came out. It was about St. Paul's Abbey. I can't remember what it is now.
Oh,
Yeah, you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. And she never really finds the girl that she put up for adoption.
Yeah.
She went through the struggles.
Yeah.
The beauty is here. They did.
They do.
And
Wow.
and they did, and they had this amazing reunion.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh, I can't wait to read it.
So
So
listen,
thoughtful.
KathleenCarterCommunications.com.
Yes.
Because nobody else is going to have that .com.
I don't think so.
If you are interested in submitting something, fill out the form. She'll check it out. You have to. I mean, part of your job is just constantly looking and looking and looking, right? For materials. And having people send you stuff.
I do hear from a lot of people. I don't actually seek anything out, so
They come to
they
you.
come.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like, you
but
have
I do have to go through
through.
it. Yeah, and it's just me. I don't have a team. So everything that comes in, I'm reading, I'm considering, I'm getting back to you. So
I appreciate your time today.
Yeah,
I
of
really,
course.
Thank you so
for
much.
having me.
I like to do these because I have no idea. So this is good for me to understand better what publicists do. Literary publicists, they're publicists in pretty much every.
Yeah, and it's
Every
very
business.
different.
Very different.
I've worked with like the celebrity publicists, so I know how it's a whole different world.
And you want to stay out of that world.
I very much do.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
You've got some great books that are coming out that you mentioned. Jody, how do you pronounce her last
Jody
name?
Pico. She's not a client anymore, but she's amazing. Yeah.
But you've got the return. Is that your favorite one for this year?
I'm excited. I'm very excited about that one.
Yeah. Are there any others that you want to call out that you're excited about? I know you mentioned Running Mates.
Running Mates
Looking
comes out in
forward to Running
February.
Mates on Valentine's Day.
Yep. Also in February, I'm working on a debut novel called Acts of Forgiveness by a woman named Maura Cheeks, and it's a novel that imagines what would happen if we implemented a nationwide reparations program. And it's inspired by a piece she wrote for The Atlantic about the racial wealth gap. So I'm very excited about that one. I think it's going to be a big book.
How long does it take you to get through a book?
It
It
depends.
takes me a month.
It depends really because I have 2 kids, so I'm
on top of that.
also their personal chauffeur and coordinator.
So you can relate to that other book.
Yes, I can very much. So I try to read at night before bed, and then when my kids are at their dad's, because I'm divorced, I usually read Saturday mornings, and I can get a book in on a Saturday morning if
You
I
can
need
go through a whole book.
I can.
Do you know how many words you read per minute? Is that a thing?
No, I'm not a super.
You're not one of these.
I'm not a speed reader, and I wouldn't even say I'm a super fast reader, but like, I think I'm efficient when I need to be. So there are sometimes it takes me a month to get through a book because I know I have the time and it's not pressing. But I have a book that I'm working on that comes out in June, and I just got the manuscript. And I was away this past weekend, and I read it on the plane because I knew I had to get it done. So I just finished it on the plane.
Good,
and
excited
yeah,
about it?
it's good. It's another novel. It's called Dad Camp.
Dad Camp?
Yeah.
Okay.
Comes out in June. So.
Listen, you're getting some hot off the press information here, books to keep an eye out for.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep an eye out for Running Mates.
Yep.
We're going to keep an eye out for the return of Ellie Black.
Yep.
We've got this other one, the one you just mentioned.
Acts of Forgiveness.
See, I have no
Yeah,
memory.
it's all right.
I
It's
can't
well, it's a
remember
lot.
anything.
Yeah.
And
And then
Dad Camp.
Dad Camp will be good for Father's Day.
All right, so KathleenCarterCommunications.com. Reach out to her, and again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then we're looking
This is
forward to
great.
seeing these books
Yeah,
and seeing
me too.
some of these authors and
In
pop up
action,
and
you will see them. So that's
All right, and if
exciting.
there are any book signings that are coming up, we're going to let you know, and then let us know. Maybe we'll come by and
That would
say
be
hi.
awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so
Sounds
much.
great. Thank you.
All right, be well, everybody.